Rescue hooks to rescue, Mayday! Get ahead, West. Bad Mayday, what's your location? Get the panel out of here, hurry up! We need radio silence, baby. Water in that 2.5-inch line. 48 inch water in a 2.5-inch line. To the rope, to the rope, rope to the rope. 35 delivered in, 35 delivered in.
Welcome to the Emergency Traffic Podcast. Hello and welcome to the Emergency Traffic Podcast, where we talk about firefighter and paramedic line of duty deaths to learn from the tragic events and potentially prevent them from happening in the future. My name is Paul, and I'm joined by my co-hosts Doug and Dirk today. Zach is not available. Hello, Doug. How's it going today?
Yeah, hey Paul, I'm doing well. A little tired with just life with 2 kids and a wife and working and extra working and shift work and everything, but it's the way it goes, I guess. It's what I signed up for, so we'll just keep on going. Summer's just busy and now it's wrapping up, so trying to squeeze every last drop out of summer you can before we get that nice 9-month long winter we're all used to.
Yeah, for sure. I know. We got to have at least another month of summer. I'm not ready to quit yet. Dirk, how are you? What's new?
I'm doing well. Not quite as busy as Doug, and that's a lifestyle choice as well. Enjoying summer and yeah, what's left of it, and yeah, just hanging out right now on a couple of days off here. Going back tomorrow, and yeah, had a nice 3-banger here last week. Was part of the incident command system there, which probably I had the most boring job, staging officer. So that was
Oh, lucky.
too exciting there.
Dirk and I
And
got to be at the
I think
first
Doug,
call.
I think Doug was there as well.
The first time ever we were both in the same call.
Oh, wow. That's cool.
Yeah,
It wasn't
and
that exciting of a call though.
it was most boring fight I've ever been to. Yeah,
Oh,
It was
no.
it was the complete opposite. Usually, the multiple alarm fire, you don't need the trucks, you need the guys to go replace crews. Well, this fire, it was one relay to a ladder truck had 4 pumps in it. One relay to a ladder truck had 3 pumps in it. So you just needed the drivers for the trucks, and everybody else just stood around, and the ladders did all the work. So we didn't need
Oh,
this multiple alarm fire was for the rigs, not for the guys.
right. Just flowing lots of water. Yeah, lots of pumping. I like that. Lots of pumping stuff. But
But even then, I mean, the relay pump is exciting when you set it up. When
right.
you're doing it for the 5th hour in a row, the thing's already going. You're just
Yep.
standing there watching a gauge, making sure it doesn't move. Like,
Right.
don't touch anything and nothing will happen. Just leave it alone.
Yeah. Check the fuel. Where's
Yeah.
the pizza?
Yeah, where's the
well,
pizza? There's a question.
don't,
Go there.
Doug, don't go there.
There was a fuel truck that dragged the fuel line through the burning garbage to fuel up a truck, but that's another.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
It was a like a refuse or recycling plant or something.
Yes.
I think I
Yeah.
remember hearing about it.
And just for fact, just to brag, we had a total of 40 units on scene within that. I think it was 22 hours.
For a bunch of garbage.
Yeah. Well, as Doug said, you really just need operators, but that's not how we run.
Yeah.
So we exchange the whole crew. So yeah.
Wow.
Anyhow, that was the excitement we had here.
Yeah. What else is new? Dirk, you got away camping a couple times, I think, with your son and your wife over the last month.
Couple times, and I'm gonna go a couple more times. Once by myself next week, and then
Nice.
after that, the week after, we get an exchange student coming from Spain. So we'll take him out into the mountains for 3 nights. I actually had to rent a different trailer for that because
Wow.
mine doesn't have a furnace, and it
Oh.
doesn't sleep. It sleeps 3, but not 4. So I just rented a cheap hybrid. So
Did you rent a real pickup truck to drive it around too?
I got a V6. That's better than your 4-cylinder pickup truck there.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, that's Paul. That's Paul. Sorry, I confused you two.
It's a 6-cylinder. It's not a 4-cylinder. And Doug, you just been working, right?
Oh yeah. I mean, overtime shifts and union shifts and real shifts, and yeah, I just work a lot.
Reading? You've been watching any games or reading any books or?
Well, I'm reading a book on the Deutsche Bank fire in New York that I'm slowly getting through, which I'm sure you guys will want to read after I'm done with it. But
Absolutely, absolutely.
yeah, I'm just waiting for hockey season to start, which is coming up fast. So that's, yeah,
Too
typical
soon.
NASCAR every weekend I watch, but you guys
Too
don't care
soon.
about that.
No, no. And Dirk, what about you? Reading
Uh,
anything? Watching movies or?
I am reading, well, start reading a book again because I always fall asleep.
I can't read at night. I can only read during the day. If I read at night, I fall asleep right away.
It's the No Nonsense Leadership by Jared Sergey.
Okay,
So this is
cool.
actually hand signatured by him.
Ooh, autograph.
I watched his presentation a few times on Zoom. It's fantastic. The I can't remember what the presentation's name was, but it's based on his no nonsense leadership book. So yeah, super exciting. I will have a ride along with me on one of the night shifts coming up here from Belgium, the Belgian
Nice.
firefighter. He's camping right now in the mountains. He's trying to dodge that fire in Jasper. I think they're kicking them all out because they have roving blackouts there,
Oh yeah.
power outages and stuff like that. And so yeah, it's going to be exciting meeting him and spending a few
Cool.
hours with him. Yeah,
Cool. Great. Yeah. Well, I just been camping every other week, and I helped out with the antiques there on the weekend at the Harvest Festival, and getting started with my Nate work lately as well. So good. Okay. Well, this week's incident that we're going to discuss here on the podcast took place just a few years ago in Farmington, Maine, where an explosion occurred at a newly renovated office of a nonprofit organization for adults with cognitive and developmental abilities. One firefighter was killed and 5 other firefighters were injured, as well as an employee of the organization. The building was destroyed as a result of the explosion. Worthy to note that in the Pacific or in the Atlantic Northeast in Maine, this was only a year after the 80 structure fires that were caused by the overpressurized gas lines in several neighborhoods north of Boston in September of 2018, which forced thousands of people from their homes and resulted in 8,600 homes needing inspections for leaks and damage. Do you guys remember that? I remember reading about that one where all these houses just started blowing up because of too much pressure on the furnaces.
that would have been a very cool call.
I remember the video
Yeah.
from the news helicopters and like just houses on fire everywhere and reading the forums and stuff. Fire like just mutual aid coming from all over the place because there was like 8,000 houses on fire, like literally.
Yeah, there was some good articles in that fire or NFPA journal and other magazines about it too. Yeah. Anyway, so of course when this happened right away, they're thinking, "Oh no, we're going to go through this again."
I wonder if they had automatic aid or mutual aid for the big fire.
Probably. We're going to talk a little bit about that. I think I don't know about that one, but
Was how many alarms did they get to?
yeah. So
That's a
Farmington is a
chirp at
community
you,
of
Paul.
about. Say sorry.
I said that was a chirp at you.
You're trying to give me a hard time about automatic aid. Yep, I know. Just the way it should be. Farmington's a community of about 7,700 people, about 35 miles north of the state capital of Augusta. It was established in 1781. Population rose another to 1,800 when the local state university is opened during the school year. So 7,700 normally, and then another 1,800 when the university is open. The Farmington Fire Rescue is 29 active members that provide fire-related emergency services for the town of Farmington, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. It's a full-time fire chief with office hours during the day during the week, 4 full-time firefighters on duty 7 days a week, 12 hours a day during the daytime, and on alternating shifts of 2 on, 2 off. Also, Monday to Friday, there's a department has a per diem firefighter on duty as well. So kind of like Fort Saskatchewan was doing when I was there, even though 26,000 people and they had 3 firefighters on during the day, during the week, and eventually on weekends. The apparatus in Farmington consists of 2 pumpers, a tower ladder, a squad truck, a rescue air truck, and a communications vehicle, a chief's car, hazmat trailer, a gator, like off-road side by side that's used for brush fires. And in the winter, as a rescue unit with tracks when they have people out walking or snowmobiling and stuff. Pretty small coverage area, 56 square miles in its initial response area, which is very common in the Northeast United States. Small communities, side by side other communities, and may or may not have automatic aid. The building involved in this incident served as a central office for this organization that was residential and life skill support to individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities. Had been in operation since 2003. The original building was a one-story partial basement, and it was approximately 2,500 to 3,000 square feet. The organization had identified the need for a larger facility due to training, meeting rooms, and administrative purposes. They purchased land to the east of the original structure for their expansion, and in the fall of 2018, the organization started construction on this expansion, which included an addition and a parking lot on all sides of the building. The addition included a basement for utilities and storage, first floor, meeting rooms, etc., and adjoined the existing first floor of their previous building. And they also had a second floor added with offices and restrooms. The new basement did not connect to the existing basement, so it only connected on the first floor from the original building. There was 2 rooms in the basement, separated by a block wall. During the renovation, the existing propane tank, 250 gallons, which was located on the Bravo Alpha corner of the original building, was removed. A new propane tank, larger, 500 gallons, was located on the southeast corner of the property, about 100 feet from the Bravo Charlie side corner of the new addition. The propane tank was, of course, protected by a Jersey barrier as required by code. The building construction was completed and operational in July of 2019. The 2-story office building with a full basement was approximately 32 feet wide by 81 feet long, and it was about 8,000 square feet. Now, I posted here the timeline of the construction project, and just because some of the items are relevant here. So on June 20th, the propane tank was placed on the property, and ditching was completed for the propane supply line and service into the building. And they delivered just a little bit of propane to get things fired up, 125 gallons. On June 28th, so 8 days later, and July 1st and 2nd, they paved the parking lot, and the service riser from the propane tank to the propane system was paved over by the paving company by mistake. On July 25th, after they figured out where the riser was and stuff and got it all hooked up, they delivered another 250 gallons of propane. In September 1st, the building opened for business. The third-party inspector never certified the completion of the construction project. On September 10th, 4 bollards were drilled into the ground on the Bravo side in the vicinity of the propane supply line entering the building, just to protect the regulator and stuff. So they put up the, steel and cement bollards. One of the bollards had, unknown to anybody, had severed the supply line running into the building. The bollards were installed to protect the air conditioning units on the side Bravo. The company installed the bollards, never requested a, like here we call it dial before you dig, or a line locate before they put the bollards in. So they didn't check to see what was underneath for underground utilities. September 12th, so a week and a bit after they opened the building, employees reported there was no hot water. The hot water was supplied from the propane boiler. September 13th, propane company notified the building maintenance supervisor that the propane tank was empty, and they delivered another 391 gallons. So we had a delivery of 250 gallons, a delivery of 125 gallons, and now 391 gallons. 3 days later, the propane tank was discovered empty with frost on the bottom of the tank and the ground around the tank at about 8 o'clock in the morning. And the resulting explosion happened at 8:17 that same day. We'll get into the details in a minute on that. So the weather was like 55 degrees Fahrenheit. Winds were out of the northwest at 6 miles per hour, not a factor in this incident. On September 16th, the day of the explosion, maintenance worker arrived at the office building. He started moving folding tables from the first floor into the basement, which was a new addition of the building. After several trips to the basement, he started to feel lightheaded, and he mentioned to the building's maintenance supervisor. The maintenance employee wasn't sure what caused him to feel lightheaded. Both employees were at the basement at the time. This was at 5 after 8. The maintenance supervisor advised he was going to evacuate employees from the building, so obviously they felt something was wrong. The lights were on in the basement. The maintenance supervisor turned the lights off when he left. There's no offices down there, just utilities and just a big storage room. Upon exiting the building, the maintenance employee looked at the propane tank, which was located on the Bravo Charlie corner of the property, and the maintenance employee stated there was frost on the bottom of the tank and on the ground. At about 8:06, the maintenance supervisor called the fire chief personally and requested the fire and rescue department respond to the facility due to a possible propane leak in the building. 12 employees were evacuated to the building and told to locate on the end of the parking lot on the Delta side. At about 8:07, the chief called dispatch and said, dispatch the guys for a possible propane leak. And a minute later, they dispatched the town's fire and rescue department for a potential propane leak. The chief responded from headquarters, and at 9 minutes after 8, he got there at 10 after 8, 11 after 8. He parked his car in the parking lot near the highway entrance to the building. Tower 3 was dispatched at 8:11 and arrived at 8:12. Tower 3 pulled in the parking lot past the fire chief's vehicle facing the alpha side of the structure. The maintenance employee met Car 1 and the employee in the parking lot on the alpha side, walked with him to side Charlie to meet with the maintenance supervisor. When Tower 3 arrived, Car 1 advised the crew to bring the multi-gas detectors to the Charlie side. At 18:13, Car 1 radioed county dispatch requesting the response of a service technician from the propane agency. The captain and the firefighter from Tower 3 took the multi-gas meters to Charlie side to the propane tank. The deputy chief, who had come on the jump seat of Engine 2, met the chauffeur from Tower 3. They walked to the Bravo side near the end of the parking lot. The captain and the chauffeur from Engine 2 went to Charlie side, meet the fire chief and the crew from Tower 3. Firefighter from the tower checked the atmosphere on the Charlie side outside, and nothing registered on the detector. Firefighter from Tower 3 noticed the frost on the propane tank and on the ground around. He checked each bollard with the multi-gas detector. Nothing registered on the detector. Car 1 then directed the crew from Tower 3 to enter the building. They surveyed the first floor. Nothing registered on the gas detector. They went into the basement. A firefighter on Tower 3 stated the multi-gas detector started alarming at 10% LEL at the top of the basement steps. As the firefighter started down the steps, the LEL started increasing. Once he reached the basement, the multi-gas detector read 100% LEL and went to full alarm. They're still in the building. The firefighter Tower 3 mentioned this to the captain of Tower 3. The captain was in the basement already and noticed a boiler on the wall. He was near the stairwell, and he was only in the basement approximately 30 seconds before the explosion occurred. Prior to the explosion, the captain was in the basement with the maintenance supervisor, the firefighter from Tower 3, and the chauffeur from Engine 2. Car 1 and the captain from Engine 2 were on the first floor. The deputy chief and the chauffeur from Tower 3 were located side Bravo outside near the end of the parking lot at 18:16 hours. Approximately a minute later, the explosion occurred, destroyed the first floor and the second floor of the new addition. The force of the explosion knocked down and seriously injured the captain, 2 firefighters, and the maintenance supervisor in the basement. Car 1 and the captain from Engine 2, who were on the first floor, were blown into the basement. Chauffeur of Tower 3 was walking towards side Alpha of the building when it occurred. The explosion occurred. He was blown onto the grass on side Bravo. Deputy chief was standing on side Bravo, was knocked down. After the explosion, deputy chief moved the chauffeur from Tower 3 towards a tire shop and started medical treatment on him. The town police department called county dispatch to check on the status of the fire rescue department due to a possible explosion. He left police headquarters and started driving towards the explosion. He turned down the state highway and could see that a building had exploded. He wasn't sure which one. He arrived on scene, advised dispatch that an explosion had occurred, and the office building provided the address, called for power company and ambulances to respond. The police officer took command of the incident at this time at 8:21. These actions of the police officer were confirmed by footage from his body camera Also, at 18:20 hours, county dispatch transmitted a mass casualty incident response for 5 medic units to the incident. When police officer 3 arrived on scene, he parked his vehicle behind engine 2 on the state road. Bystanders were starting to access the property to assist with injured firefighters and civilians. The police officer went to the Bravo side, being power lines were down on the Delta side. He approached the building. He identified the entire building had been blown off the foundation. He could see the captain of Tower 3 and the firefighter. So he kind of took command. He made a bit of a triage, and bystanders were climbing into the basement of the building to assist the injured firefighters and the facility's maintenance supervisor. There was active fire on the debris pile due to the explosion. All fire and rescue members that responded to the initial alarm were all incapacitated. Police officer 3 stretched an 1 3/4 line from the bumper of engine 2, and a bystander who was also a volunteer firefighter pumped engine 2. Police officer passed the hose line to the captain of Tower 3, who was still in the basement, and the firefighter from Tower 3 had climbed out of the basement. So just utter chaos, right? I mean, this happened. All the guys that were on scene are all incapacitated. So police and bystanders started to take over. Um, the squad 1 arrived shortly after, and they assigned some other lines to knock down the fire and to locate and treat the injured firefighter. Engine 1 arrived on scene approximately 8:23. And then a medic started to arrive. The agency's EMS director who responded took over medical group supervisor and triaged the people, made a treatment area, and started transporting people. Won't go into all the details on that. They checked all the office building employees for accountability as well. Um, then, of course, they ran out of water because no one had hooked up a hydrant. So the police officer actually realized that they ran a 4-inch from one engine to another and then to a hydrant so that they could have water to continue fighting the fire. The police officer actually drove the truck to engine 1 where they could hook up the hydrant and hooked it all up so they could have water. The deputy chief, county emergency manager, arrived on scene, and he took over the command of the incident. So the contributing factors to this, of course, were occupational injuries. Of course, are often a result of one or more contributing factors. Which happened here is a lack of locating and marking underground utilities. The installation of the bollard severed the propane line. Lack of pressure testing an empty tank by the propane company. Odorant fade or scrubbing because of the soil and concrete. So the mercaptan smell had been scrubbed out of the gas so they couldn't smell it. Lack of a scene size up and a risk assessment. Lack of incident management. And maybe not understanding the gas monitor's capabilities. Improper sampling, monitoring, detection. I would say more the actions upon once they got the 10% LEL, they didn't react. Maybe a lack of hazardous materials training and certification.
I'm just, not super shocked, but there were a lot of drop balls right from the get go during the construction there for sure. I'm not sure, Doug or Paul, can you order your propane without the mercaptan? Like
Yes,
that,
you can,
you
but
can.
not for domestic consumption. So a lot of propane that's used for industrial processes does not have mercaptan added. Just up the road from me here in the town where I live, there's actually a mercaptan injection station. So they inject it in the pipeline before distribution.
Yeah, I used to work for a gas company, and I've transported mercaptan barrels once to one of those stations up north here. But uh, I'm shocked that they didn't put that in, because that would have been the case right after they lost all the gas on the first fill up. Somebody should have clued in on that one, right?
Well, the mercaptan gets scrubbed out when it leaks through the ground or concrete. The fire department I was on early in my career, they had a call that was similar. They had a gas leak, and no one smelled propane because the mercaptan was scrubbed out by the dirt.
Hmm,
So that's the thing that
interesting.
people didn't think of is, hey, we didn't smell anything, so there can't be propane here. But if there's a chance it's gone through the ground, then the captain goes away. We had a call like this out in Clearwater too. A log building blew up. They went to turn the furnace on, and there was a leak in the ground. They didn't know it. The basement was full of propane, and he lit it, and the building blew up, and the guy just made it out with his life.
I agree with Dirk that during the installation and whatever of this propane stuff, there was a lot of drop balls, but that is a point that you can kind of focus in on, or whatever you want to say. That as a fire department, you can't take it for granted that everything was done properly, right? You can't, I mean, you have to, if everything got done properly all the time, we wouldn't need fire departments. We would all be out of business because everything would run proper. So people make mistakes, and it's not intentional. They just make a mistake and they drill through a supply line of propane, whatever. I mean, maybe there should have been some red flags when it was like, hey, we need the propane tank filled again. Hey, we need the propane tank filled again. I mean, if your car kept running out of gas, you'd start wondering why it was running out of gas so quickly.
When you weren't driving it.
And
especially when you don't have hot water.
One thing that I noticed here on when you were going through it is that's kind of a pet peeve of mine. Well, two things really. That when the crews show up on a truck, it's like one or two guys go do this, and then one guy from this truck and one guy from that truck go do this. And I don't like on small, sometimes volunteer in this, whatever, when like a chief officer rides on the truck, because that's not your job. And I think you need to show up. If you're riding on the truck in the firefighter's quote unquote spot, well, now either the chief's job's not getting done because you're doing the firefighter role, or the firefighter role is not getting done because you took that spot and now you're being the chief. And it creates confusion when, like, you're the deputy chief of the department, but you're riding in the back of the truck with a captain, and it's like, well, who outranks who? Who's in charge of who? I've been on fire departments where there was that kind of like, well, what's going on here? And it's I don't know how much that in this case had anything to do with what went wrong. It could have helped if that wasn't the case. When shit went wrong, it might have had less chaos going on if the deputy chief showed up as a chief and not as a firefighter in the building. I mean, you said that the chief that showed up on car one was in the building anyways. So it's hard to knock the moth to the flame as command. You have to stand back and orchestrate and watch and take in the big picture. And then jokingly, I was thinking that this police officer got to fulfill his lifelong dream and be a firefighter for an hour. But it sounds like he did a really good job when it was like, you're the guy. There's no one else left. They're all injured. Like, figure it out. I mean, it seems to me like they made it difficult.
You're absolutely right there. I mean, the big push behind this LODD report, and the reason I selected it was because it's another case of the fire department going to a gas leak, not prepared for a gas leak, not thinking hazmat. But we'll come back to that later in the recommendations. But you're absolutely right, Doug. And I've done that as a chief, as, hey, well, can you go get the tender because we're out of people to drive or whatever? And so I go do that. And even if there's another chief on scene, what happens to me as a chief is the call changes. Something happens. Well, now I no longer have all my stuff. I no longer have my chief's vehicle. I can't go run. I don't have whatever equipment I might want. And so it's always bad because I've got one hand, tied behind my back.
And the tender doesn't have the driver now because you were the driver, and now you're doing the chief stuff. And now it's like, well, I mean, I've had it too where, I mean, the department we were on together, volunteer, but it was on call where you were on call, had to find a cover if you weren't able to come. And like, I remember times that like the deputy chief would be covering for a firefighter, and he'd ride to the MVC in the back of the engine beside me.
Right.
But when we got on scene, he'd be in command of everybody. But the captain was also in command of everybody. And it was like, who's doing what here? Like,
Yeah, it can be a problem. It's staffing. It's always staffing. And when I did command training and stuff with my captains and lieutenants, that incident commander, whoever the rank is, I don't care, whatever the rank is of the incident commander, a big part of that commander for that group of people is, of course, their safety and you need to stay back so you can see what's going on. So you can see that if something happens, you can react to it. And if you're inside, starting a chainsaw or checking the gas detector inside the building, talking to the building owner, you're not doing your job of assuring all your people are safe. Whether it's a change in the weather, whether a truck drives through your scene, whether the building explodes, you can't do the job. So you're absolutely right. Let's look at the recommendations a little bit, and then we'll get into this some more. So, recommendation one, when fire departments responding to a hazardous materials incident, should ensure a proper scene size up and risk assessment are performed. In addition, the fire department should establish isolation zones right away. It's a hazmat. We got a hot zone, we got a warm zone, we got a cold zone. Ensure continuous risk assessment is being done throughout the incident. At this incident, the members responded to a report of odor of propane or a propane leak. The fire chief arrived on scene and tower and engine 2. 5 to 7 firefighters went immediately to the Charlie side and operated in this area and near the propane tank. Eventually, 5 firefighters entered the building. At this time, they didn't identify the leak. Several firefighters noticed frost on the tank, but did not communicate that information to the fire chief. The firefighter from Tower 3 stated the gas detector started alarming at 10% at the top of the stairs, and they increased as they went down the stairs. Once you reached the basement, they went to 100%. They did not smell ethyl mercaptan. But, and this is why we do the podcast. Firefighters, if you're getting an LEL of 10 or 20 or 30%, you need to go, hey, this is a problem. My detector's going off. This is dangerous. We need to be on air. We need to have charged clotheslines. It could blow up.
That's why the chief needs to stand back and take in the whole scene. People saw the frost on the tank, didn't think much of it. Then the LEL goes off on the detector. They, in the moment, don't connect the two. A chief standing back, watching all this happening, letting it come in, thinking about it, might go, oh, well, 1 + 1 = 2. Let's all take a step back here, right? Because, you show up to gas leak calls all the time, and
and they're nothing.
It comes in as an odor. Somebody smelled something in their house, whatever. You show up, you smell nothing. You walk around, you smell nothing. Everything looks fine. But when everybody's hair should have stand up is when the detector started going off. Because that's when it's like, oh, there is something going on. Then like you say, don't rush in like it's an offensive fire attack. It's hazmat. The joke about hazmat, hurry up and wait, right?
That's right. Exactly.
Hey, when the alarm's going off, that's when it's time to be like, all right, something's going on here. We're a small fire department. Let's take this slow. Maybe call a hazmat team from somewhere. Evacuate the building. Just take it slow and figure out what's going on here. At a fire, you can be aggressive because most of the time you know what's going on. Something's burning. Go put it out. At a hazmat call, you don't know what's going on all the time. You have to slowly figure out what's going on and then fix that problem.
Yeah, right away it's defensive. Okay, where is it safe? Where is it not safe? Potentially. And so many fire services have gotten caught because they didn't treat it as a hazmat. And that's exactly what the recommendation says, just what you just said. It's not an offensive structural firefighting call. It's a hazmat. Defensive strategy. Respond to the scene, uphill or upwind if you can, in a defensive manner. Go to staging. Don't everybody pull up in front of the house. Area should be upwind, sufficient distance from the incident because it could be real. But I used to always get grief too. If I had a big gas leak, I would say, okay, bring the foam. Let's cover it up. And they'd all look at me like, what? Why do you want to cover it up? It's gasoline and it's summertime. It needs to be covered up. It's emitting flammable vapor right now. Well, then they got to get a vac truck. We're going to be here for 2 hours. I don't care. It's a danger. That's why I got the big T-shirt on, is so I can protect the people, right? Initial radio report was not performed. It should be done from the front seat of the engine. First arriving resource, the chief, for example. Hey, we've got a building. People are evacuated. We're going to check it out. So-and-so, get your detector, do a perimeter, right? First thing you do when you get a propane tanker on its side in the middle of downtown, wherever, what do? You send a crew in full PPE with a gas detector to do a wide perimeter and then narrow it down. In the meantime, you're setting up water supplies. This should be the same.
The reason they were called is because the employee felt dizzy. So my first thought, so it wasn't the gas, it was somebody feels dizzy, maybe it's carbon monoxide. I'm not sure if you approach a carbon monoxide call with the same caution as you would do if it came in as a gas. So that I'm just thinking of staging all this stuff. I agree. Once they had the LAL alarm going off, they should have backed out. But initially, you show up for probably a carbon monoxide alarm, right?
But that's a good point, Dirk. And actually, I made a note of it here because there was recently, and I can't remember where, a carbon monoxide is flammable in the right concentration. And there was recently an explosion of carbon monoxide, and they didn't think, hey, it's CO, we'll be okay. And the complaints were all headaches, dizziness, unresponsive. And then all of a sudden, the firefighters went in and it blew up. I'll have to find that one because, yeah, initially you could think that. But the guy who phoned the chief said, I think we might have a propane leak. So that kind of helped it there. And it being not being wintertime, but a new building, it could be carbon monoxide, right? The furnace duct didn't get, the chimney didn't get hooked up right, that kind of stuff. It was a cool day, 55 degrees. They had all the windows closed. So that's reasonable. But yeah, they just talk about, do a good initial report and a 360. If it's potentially flammable or explosive vapors, then uh, suspect a spill, contaminated environment. Recommendation number 2 was ensure incident commanders initiate defensive strategy and communicate the incident action plan during initial operations. They didn't really have it; they kind of talked about it and walked around. Based on the tactical objectives taken to mitigate the hazard. Firefighters should be trained to understand the scrubbing or odorant fade of ethyl mercaptan from propane and natural gas. This training includes the use of multi-gas detectors to determine if a potentially explosive atmosphere is present. You can't depend on your nose to defend you, right? Um, yeah, they had at least 300 gallons had leaked into the ground. No employees ever smelled ethyl mercaptan because it gets scrubbed out. And in Alberta here, we have a lot of propane without mercaptan because they use it for industrial processes. And so a lot of time you'll see on a train car, they don't do it anymore. You used to write on the train car, propane non-odorized. But now they don't advertise what's in the train car for obvious reasons of security and stuff. Yeah, it can lose its odor. And in Dalmeny, Saskatchewan, they had a call. I don't think I went on it, but I remember them telling me about it. Is that they discovered there was a propane leak, and the the rotten egg smell had been scrubbed out by the dirt. Training on sampling, how to use your gas detectors. That's easy. What does your department do for gas detector training for firefighters? Probably just during their 1072. No, maybe.
No, we got regular training on the MX Force. We got a whole bunch on the rescue trucks that are called out to any gas leak or carbon monoxide leaks, and I'm not sure with COVID it's slowed down a little bit, but we probably had training once a year at least, and then if you're transferred to a rescue station, the guys usually teach you um, how to read the MX4, and
Yeah, a lot
we
of
have
it's kind of on the job because everybody's got different ones and new ones
yeah, we have
come.
bump tested every day, so we all got the
Right,
same. So
you're
it doesn't matter
testing
which
them.
station you go to. So that
Right.
I think we're pretty well trained when it comes to that. But Doc might have a different opinion because he's the hazmat guy.
I'm not a hazmat guy. I don't know why you think I'm a hazmat guy. I'm not a hazmat guy. But yeah, I mean, I agree with what Dirk said, but most of our gas calls, if it's a bigger structure, hazmat's coming and they are the pros. Or if it's a gas leak, then we call the gas company. I mean, we
Right.
really
Yeah.
just have the detector to confirm or deny if there is gas, right? Like,
Yeah. Okay. The other recommendation they had, of course, is make sure everybody's wearing proper PPE, including SCBA, if a potentially IDLH environment. Um, they didn't sense anything until they started going to the basement. So that's, minimum full structural protection clothing. And if you're in an ignitable atmosphere, then of course you have to have SCBA on, and you should be staffed by a protective hand line. Here in Lacombe, if there was a gas leak where, well, the guy called I was digging a post and I hit a gas line. Right away, we would hook a hydrant and grab a line and stuff because you knew there was evidence that the Traco just cost a line or whatever. But if it's just I smelled gas, then typically don't. Is that kind of how you guys do it?
Yeah, I mean, uh, even the ones where the guy hits a gas line, lots of times ACO just says, "You guys can stay if you want. You don't have to," and they kind of deal with it on their own. But we will stage at a hydrant, not always hook into it, and not always
Yeah.
stretch a line, but we're there staged for if something goes wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah, we need to talk to the gas company there, and then just liaison with them and see if they feel it is a little bit more risky. They will let us know, and then we'll bump up the alarm or pipe into the hydrant and stuff like that. So yeah, we work with the gas company quite often, right? So they take care of that stuff. But if they need help, they will let us know.
Yeah. And it talks about SOGs for this kind of call, how to do sampling, detection, monitoring at propane emergencies. Fire department should develop and implement SOGs for this, compliant with your OH&S requirements. At least a couple of four gas meters usually should be in place in operation by engine or truck company firefighters, and command so that command can evaluate the hazards and establish zones. Ensure firefighters are properly trained and certified to understand the capabilities of the multi-gas detectors, especially the sensor performance, because they can also be poisoned, right, if you get too much. Understanding how combustible gas sensors detect gas is critical to correctly interpreting readings and avoid misuse of these instruments that include LEL combustible gas sensors. Whenever, and the big thing I highlighted here, whenever readings exceed 10% LEL in an explosion and a fire hazard is possible, this is for the least conservative or highest acceptable alarm set point for instruments used for monitoring combustible gases and vapors. I just want to make a comment here. Is many people don't understand that the reading that your detector is doing, it's not essentially that it was calibrated to that gas. So if it's propane, your most gas detectors are calibrated to methane, which
Yeah,
is natural gas
you need to
primarily.
know that too. Is on our detectors, we know it's the LEL and the UEL whatever of this gas,
Right,
which it's for us. We just use it as a warning that something's going on, right? And
right. But actually, 10% LEL of propane using a methane calibrated detector is more than 10% of propane. Propane is more flammable, it reacts differently than methane. So that's actually like a 30% LEL when you see 10%, maybe 20 some, 22, 25. So a lot of people don't understand that is it's not precise. And in our industry, in Alberta, where there's a petrochemical industry, I mean, you say 10% LEL anywhere, and they're running because they know that that's dangerous. But
something,
for
one
the
of my, I guess, final thoughts, overall thoughts of this call is, um, it seems like right from the very beginning, people are trying to downplay the event, right? The guy, he phones the chief personally instead of phoning 911,
911,
and the chief goes over there by himself, and then the truck shows up, and it's like, oh, just go check over here to see what's going on, and like, it's not it's not treated. I mean, personally, we probably agree. You should treat or expect kind of the worst out of a call
sure.
until you can rule that out and bring it back down to okay, everything's fine, right? When you get an alarms call, you should expect fire. When you get a structure fire call, you should expect fire. when you get a gas leak, you should expect a gas leak and be prepared to mitigate what you're going to do. And then if you show up and it's like, oh, it's not a fire, it's cooking. Oh, it's not a gas leak, it's sewer gas, it's whatever, right? Then it's like, okay, well, we'll ramp this down then. Instead of showing up and being like, oh shit, there's fire. Oh shit, there's gas. And then you got to ramp everything up. You should be prepared and thinking in the mindset that we're going to the real thing this time. I mean, we always say, Dirk, expect fire, expect victims. It's you think that until you know that it's not there, right? A building isn't a vacant building until we say it's a vacant building, right? So that's the way you have to think about calls.
Well, yeah, look at the high rise in Memphis, right? And they all took the elevator to the whatever ninth floor because they'd been there 20 times before, and they always had alarms in that building, and they didn't expect fire. And that is the biggest pitfall that our industry has, is that we get into a lulled into a sense of overconfidence and not being
Complacency.
complacency, right? You
Absolutely.
know,
Yeah.
exactly. Stretch a line,
Yeah. Damn it, I can't argue with Doug, so I totally agree with him. And yeah, as Andy Frederick said, the garbage man does get excited when he sees garbage in the streets, and we should be the same. We should expect the worst and then downgrade.
That's why we're there, right? That's the whole deal. But it's tough in the small cities, and it's tough everywhere. Doesn't matter where you're doing medical calls all day.
You're right. It is tough everywhere when you go to 1,000 alarms calls before the one fire, and you go to
Yeah,
a whole bunch of nothing gas leaks but you still need to be mentally prepared for like this might be the one, right? Because
right,
we all in a career you have like the building in your district that you go to 100 times, right? False alarm, false alarm, false alarm. Oh shit, real fire. And you need to be prepared that it's a real fire. I mean, the high school fire that we went to in Lacombe, Paul, came in and the first report was alarms ringing, right? And how many times do you go to an alarms ringing call and it's alarms ringing and you reset the alarm and you go home? But
yep,
there are times you show up and there's a reason the alarm's going. And you need to have, to me, you need to have the mindset that something is wrong, and that's why the fire department is coming.
right. Oh, good, great discussion, everyone. Kind of a, it's a call that I chose just because it's a pitfall we fall into so many times.
It was a good talk. It was
Sure.
good. It feels like it's been a while since we recorded one of these, so it was nice to get back
It
on
has.
here. It's good.
It has been a while, yeah.
It has been a while. Thank you, everybody.